The velvet box snapped open, but it wasn't facing me. I stood there, freezing in my little black dress that I had spent half my rent money on, my hands trembling by my sides. The rooftop wind whipped my hair across my face, stinging my eyes, but I didn't blink. I couldn't. I felt like the ground had just disappeared, leaving me floating in a nightmare. Rok-jin, the man I had loved for 2 years, the man who told me he wanted to build a future with me, was down on one knee. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past my shoulder, smiling that charming, crooked smile that used to make my knees weak. "Leora," he said, his voice smooth like expensive silk. "Will you make me the happiest man in Seoul?" My best friend stepped forward from behind me. Leora Hayes. The woman I had cried to about my insecurities, the woman who helped me pick out this dress because she said tonight was my big night. She walked right past me, her shoulder brushing mine hard enough to make me stumble, and she giggled. It was a cruel, high-pitched sound. "Yes, Rok-jin." "Oh my God, finally," she squealed, extending her hand. The diamond on the ring was huge. It caught the lights of the city skyline, the Seoul Tower glowing in the distance, and mocked me with its sparkle. It was real. This was real. "Rok-jin," I whispered, my voice barely working. What is this?" He stood up, sliding the ring onto Leora's finger, and then he finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. There was no love there. Just amusement. "Oh, Tamson," he said, letting out a short, dry laugh. "Don't look so shocked. Did you really think I was going to marry you? A part-time English teacher with a mountain of student loans? My father would cut me off before the ink on the marriage license dried." "But you said—" I choked out, tears burning my eyes. "You said you loved me." "I said a lot of things," he shrugged, wrapping an arm around Leora's waist. "It was a bet, Tamson. Just a bet with the boys. 5,000,001 says I can date the innocent foreigner for 2 years without her realizing I'm bored out of my mind. And honestly, I won. But God, was it exhausting pretending to like your cheap cooking and your whining." Leora laughed again, admiring her ring. "Sorry, bestie," she said, not looking sorry at all. "But business is business. My dad's tech company and Rok-jin's family empire? It's a merger. You were just a placeholder. A placeholder that lasted a little too long." My heart didn't just break, it shattered into dust. I felt sick. Physically sick. The humiliation washed over me hot and heavy. I looked around. There were other people on the rooftop terrace, waiters, other couples, and they were all watching. Some looked pitying, others were whispering. I was the joke. I had always been the joke. I turned around and ran. Before we continue with this absolute disaster of a night, welcome to Stories Pulse. If you want to see how I make these two regret every single word, smash that subscribe button, like this video, and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from. I read every single one. Now let's get back to the moment I decided to stop being a victim. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs, stumbling in my heels, my vision blurred by tears. I could still hear their laughter echoing down the stairwell. It chased me out of the building and onto the busy streets of Gangnam. It started to rain. Of course it did. It felt like the universe was just adding a cinematic filter to my misery. I walked aimlessly, ignoring the honking cars and the bright neon signs reflecting on the wet pavement. I felt foolish. I felt used. I thought about all the times I had scrimped and saved to buy Rok-jin gifts, thinking he was just humble and didn't like flashing his wealth. I thought about how I trusted Leora with my deepest secrets. "Stupid," I muttered to myself, wiping rain and mascara from my cheeks. "You are so stupid, Tamson." I needed to go somewhere. Anywhere. I couldn't go back to my tiny apartment. Silence would kill me right now. I needed noise. I needed a distraction. I needed to burn this feeling out of my chest. I looked up and saw a heavy black door with a golden sign, the Onyx Lounge. It looked expensive. It looked like the kind of place Rok-jin would go to, which made me hate it, but it also made me want to go in. I wanted to be reckless. I wanted to stop being the good girl who saved money and drank water and went to bed at 10 p.m. The bouncer looked me up and down. I was soaked, my makeup was ruined, and I looked like a wreck. But maybe he saw the fire in my eyes, or maybe he just didn't care. He opened the velvet rope. "The cover charge is 200,000 won," he grunted. That was my grocery budget for 2 weeks. I didn't care. I pulled out my card, my credit card that was already crying for help, and tapped it. I needed a drink. I needed 5 drinks. Inside, the bass was heavy, thumping against my ribcage, replacing the rhythm of my broken heart. The air smelled of expensive cologne, smoke, and secrets. It was dark, lit only by amber recessed lighting and the glow of the bar. I marched straight to the bar and sat on a velvet stool. "Whiskey," I told the bartender. "The strongest thing you have. Make it a double." The bartender, a young guy with a sleek haircut, raised an eyebrow but poured a glass of amber liquid. "Rough night." "You have no idea," I muttered, taking the glass. I downed half of it in one go. It burned. It felt like fire sliding down my throat, and for a second, I forgot the pain in my chest. I slammed the glass down. Another. I was on my 3rd drink when I felt eyes on me. Not the creepy stares I usually got from drunk guys trying to get lucky. This felt heavy. Intense. Like gravity had shifted in the room. I turned my head slowly to the left. Sitting in the corner booth, surrounded by shadows, was a man. He wasn't like the other guys in the club who were loud and flashy. He was still. Perfectly still. He was wearing a dark charcoal suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be bespoke. He had a glass of whiskey in his hand, but he wasn't drinking it. He was just holding it, staring right at me. He was older. Definitely older than Rok-jin. Maybe in his late 40s or early 50s, but he aged like fine wine. His hair was black, swept back with a few distinguished streaks of silver at the temples. His face was sharp, angular, with high cheekbones and eyes that were so dark they looked like endless tunnels. But it was the ink that caught my attention. A complex, dark tattoo of a serpent curled up the side of his neck, disappearing into the crisp white collar of his shirt. It was dangerous. It was beautiful. And his hand, the one holding the glass, had symbols etched across the knuckles and the back of his hand. It wasn't random art. It looked like a warning label. There was an aura of power around him that was terrifying. Even from across the room, I could feel it. People gave his booth a wide berth. No one approached him. He was alone, guarding his space like a king on a throne. Our eyes locked. Usually, I would look away. I would be shy. I would feel intimidated. But tonight? Tonight, I had just been humiliated by the man I loved. Tonight, I had zero dignity left to lose. So I didn't look away. I stared back. I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He tilted his head slightly, just a fraction of an inch, acknowledging me. The alcohol gave me a surge of liquid courage. I grabbed my glass, slid off the stool, and walked toward him. My legs felt a little unsteady, but I forced myself to walk straight. As I got closer, I saw 2 massive men in suits step out of the shadows near his booth, bodyguards. They moved to block me, their faces grim. "Not a good idea, miss," one of them rumbled. I stopped, swaying slightly. I just want to sit somewhere quiet." The man in the booth raised a hand. One finger. The tattoos on his knuckles flexed. The bodyguards froze, then immediately stepped back, bowing their heads. It was a silent command, obeyed instantly. The man looked at me. Up close, he was devastatingly handsome. The tattoo on his neck pulsed slightly as he swallowed his drink. "You look like you want to fight the world," he said. His voice was deep, resonant, a low rumble that vibrated on the floorboards. His English was perfect, but with a thick, heavy accent that sounded rough and refined at the same time. "The world started it," I said, plopping down onto the leather seat opposite him without waiting for an invitation. He didn't kick me out. He just watched me. His gaze dropped to my left hand, checking for a ring. Seeing none, his eyes moved back to my face. "What is your name?" he asked. "Does it matter?" I shot back bitterly. "I'm just a placeholder. That's what I am." He swirled his whiskey. "A placeholder. That is a heavy word for such a beautiful woman." "Don't," I snapped, leaning forward. "Don't do that. Don't charm me. I hate men right now. I hate all of you. You're all liars. You all think money buys everything." I expected him to get angry. I was being rude to a man who clearly owned the room, maybe even the city. But instead, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. A half smile. "Money does buy everything," he said calmly. "Safety. Silence. Loyalty. Even love, if you pay the right price." "That's sad," I whispered, the anger draining out of me, leaving just the sadness. "That's really sad." "It is reality," he said. He pushed a bowl of nuts toward me. "Eat. You are drunk." "I'm not drunk," I lied, knocking the bowl over by accident. Peanuts spilled everywhere. "Oops." I started to giggle. It was a hysterical, broken giggle. Tears started leaking from my eyes again. I was laughing and crying at the same time, a complete mess in front of this intimidating stranger. He didn't laugh. He didn't mock me. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, a real silk handkerchief, and handed it to me. "Wipe your face," he commanded softly. "You are ruining your makeup." I took it. It smelled like sandalwood and tobacco. "Thank you." "Why are you crying, placeholder?" he asked. "My boyfriend," I hiccuped. "Ex-boyfriend. He proposed to my best friend tonight. Right in front of me. Said it was a bet." The man's expression didn't change, but the air around him grew colder. The tattoo on his neck seemed to darken in the dim light. "A bet?" "Yeah. A stupid bet." I looked at him, my vision swimming. "Why are you sitting alone? Are you sad too? Did someone dump you?" He leaned back, his dark eyes scanning my face with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "No one dumps me," he said simply. "I am alone because everyone else is boring. They want things from me. Money. Power. Favors. I don't want anything," I mumbled, feeling sleepy suddenly. The adrenaline was crashing. I just want to forget." "To forget," he repeated. He looked at me for a long moment, calculating. Then he signaled the waiter. "Bring a bottle of the 1982 Macallan," he ordered. Then he looked at me. "If you want to forget, I can help you forget. But once you start drinking with me, I do not let people leave easily." It was a warning. I heard it. But looking into those dark, abyss-like eyes and the ink curling up his throat, I didn't feel scared. I felt a pull. A magnetic, dangerous pull. "I don't have anywhere to go," I whispered. "Good," he said. "We drink." I don't remember how much. I remember the whiskey tasting like caramel and smoke. I remember talking. I told him everything. I told him about Rok-jin's family being rich snobs, about how I worked 2 jobs, about how I wanted to be an artist, but couldn't afford the supplies. I complained about the cost of therapy and how I wished I had one of those AI mental health apps that tracked your mood because mine was currently in the gutter. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He just watched me with that predatory, possessive focus. He touched my hand once, his fingers brushing against my knuckles. His skin was rough, calloused, and hot. The tattoos on his hand fascinated me. I traced one with my fingertip, a small dragon. "You have fire in you," he murmured, his thumb catching my wrist. He was a fool to extinguish it. "He didn't extinguish it," I said, leaning closer, drawn in by his heat. "He just threw water on it." "I like fire," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "It warms the cold." The tension snapped. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was the whiskey, maybe it was the heartbreak, or maybe it was just the sheer animal attraction radiating off this man. But suddenly, we were standing up. He grabbed my waist, his grip firm and possessive, pulling me flush against his hard chest. "I am going to take you to my hotel," he said, not asking. "Is that what you want?" I looked up at him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know who he was. But in his arms, I felt small and safe and desired. Yes, I breathed. He didn't smile. He just nodded, draped his heavy suit jacket over my shivering shoulders, and guided me out the back exit, past the bowing staff, into a sleek black limousine waiting in the alley. The ride was silent. The tension was thick enough to choke on. He sat close to me, his thigh pressing against mine. He didn't touch me again, but the heat coming off him was intoxicating. We arrived at a penthouse suite that screamed wealth. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. He didn't turn on the lights. The city glow was enough. He turned to me, taking the jacket off my shoulders. His hands lingered on my bare arms. His touch was scorching. I could see the ink on his neck clearer now in the moonlight. Last chance to run, he whispered, his face inches from mine. I am not a good man, Tamson. I'm tired of good men, I whispered back. The last good man I knew broke my heart. He groaned, a low sound in his throat, and then his mouth crushed down on mine. It wasn't gentle. I was hungry, demanding. It tasted like whiskey and danger. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, needing to feel something other than pain. He lifted me up effortlessly, my legs wrapping around his waist, and carried me toward the bedroom. The door kicked shut behind us, sealing us in the darkness. I woke up to the sound of silence. My head was pounding. The sunlight was streaming through the sheer curtains, blinding me. I blinked, confused. The sheets were high thread count, Egyptian cotton, smooth against my skin. I sat up, clutching the duvet to my chest. Memories of the night before flooded back in hazy fragments. The club, the whiskey, the tattoos, the things we did. My face burned hot. It had been intense, passionate. He had been so focused. Like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I looked at the pillow next to me. It was empty. I panicked. I looked around the room. It was pristine. His clothes were gone. There was no sign of him. Hello. I called out, my voice raspy. Silence. I got out of bed, finding my dress folded neatly on a chair. Next to it was a bottle of water, a bottle of aspirin, and a small velvet box, not a ring box, but a jewelry box. I opened it. Inside was a necklace. A simple, elegant platinum chain with a single, massive black diamond pendant. Underneath it was a note written in sharp, angular handwriting. For the headache. And for the company. Do not lose your fire. No name. No number. He was gone. I felt a pang of disappointment that hit harder than I expected. I was just a one-night stand. A way for a rich man to pass the time. Just like Rok-jin said, a placeholder. I put on the necklace. I don't know why. Maybe because it was beautiful, or maybe because I wanted a piece of him to keep. I dressed quickly, feeling shameful, and left the hotel. I went back to my normal life. I blocked Rok-jin and Leora on everything. I threw myself into work. I tried to forget the man with the tattoos and the dark eyes. But I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt his hands on me. 3 weeks passed. I was starting to feel human again. I was grading papers in the teacher's lounge, eating a cup of instant ramen because my budget was still ruined, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello. I answered. Miss Cole. A woman's voice. Professional. Crisp. This is the executive office of the Han Corporation. I am calling on behalf of the chairman. The chairman. I frowned. I think you have the wrong number. I don't know who the chairman is. Chairman Baek, she corrected. Baek Mu-jin. My blood ran cold. Baek. That was Rok-jin's last name. Was this Rok-jin's father? Why was he calling me? Did Rok-jin tell him about the bet? Was he calling to mock me too? What does he want? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. The chairman is holding a private birthday gala this Saturday at his estate, the woman said. He has personally requested your attendance. Why? I demanded. I'm not dating his son anymore. Ask Rok-jin why. The invitation has nothing to do with his son, the woman said, her voice betraying zero emotion. A car will be sent for you at 7 p.m. A dress has been delivered to your apartment concierge. The chairman does not accept refusals. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. What was going on? Was this another game? Another prank by Rok-jin and Leora? Inviting me to the dad's party just to humiliate me again? I should say no. I should run. But then I remembered the man in the club. I like fire. If they wanted to play games, fine. I would go. I would wear their dress, drink their champagne, and show Rok-jin that he didn't break me. I had no idea that walking into that party would change everything. Saturday arrived. The dress box was heavy. I opened it and gasped. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement of war. It was a deep, blood-red silk gown that shimmered like liquid ruby. It had intricate gold embroidery climbing up the bodice, like vines of fire. The neckline plunged daringly low, and the back was completely open. It was the kind of dress a queen would wear to an execution. It fits like a second skin. I put on the black diamond necklace, the one from the stranger, because it gave me strength. It sat against the red silk like a promise. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a broke English teacher. I looked dangerous. The car waiting downstairs was a Rolls-Royce Phantom. The neighbors were staring as the driver opened the door for me. I slid inside, the leather smelling rich and new. The drive to the Baek estate took an hour. We went up into the hills, past iron gates and security checkpoints. The house was a palace. Modern, sleek, lit up like a fortress. My heart was hammering against my ribs. You can do this, Tamson. Just survive the night. I walked up the grand staircase. The doors opened. The ballroom was filled with the elite of Seoul. Men in tuxedos, women in pastels and diamonds. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The red and gold of my dress was a shock of color in the sea of black and white. Heads turned. Whispers started. Almost immediately I saw them. Rok-jin was standing near the chocolate fountain, laughing. Leora was clinging to his arm, wearing a flashy pink dress that looked childish compared to the blood-red silk I was wearing. Rok-jin turned and saw me. His glass halted halfway to his mouth. His eyes went wide. He marched over, Leora trailing behind him like a confused puppy. Tamson, he hissed, keeping his voice low so the guests wouldn't hear. What the hell are you doing here? I stood tall, smoothing the red silk. I was invited. Invited. Leora scoffed, looking me up and down with jealous eyes. By whom? The entertainment? You look like you're here to perform. Actually, I said, channeling all the calmness I didn't feel. The chairman invited me. Rok-jin laughed. A nervous, disbelief laugh. My father? You're delusional. My father doesn't even know you exist. I made sure of that. I never told him about you because I was embarrassed. Well, someone sent a car, I said. Get out, Rok-jin growled, stepping closer. Before I call security. You're making a scene just by being here. You reek of desperation. Security. Leora waved her hand at a guard nearby. Panic started to rise in my throat. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I was being pranked. I turned to leave, just to escape the humiliation. But then, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the grand stage at the front of the room. A voice boomed over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Chairman Baek Mu-jin. I froze. I knew that name, but I had never seen Rok-jin's father. The curtains parted. A man walked out. He was wearing a black tuxedo, but the top button of his shirt was undone, revealing the dark ink of a tattoo curling up his throat. He commanded the stage with a terrifying grace. He looked out at the crowd with dark, bored eyes. My breath stopped in my lungs. It was him. The man from the club. The man with the tattoos. The man I had slept with. The man I had been fantasizing about for 3 weeks was Rok-jin's father. I felt the blood drain from my face. I grabbed Rok-jin's arm to steady myself. That? I whispered. That is your father. Rok-jin shook me off. Yes, you idiot. Now leave before he sees you. But it was too late. Chairman Baek Mu-jin scanned the crowd. He wasn't looking at the politicians or the business partners. He was hunting. His eyes landed on me, on the red dress. And then he smiled. It was a dark, possessive smile that promised chaos. He tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," his deep voice rumbled, the same voice that had whispered in my ear in the dark. "Tonight is a celebration. But not for my birthday." He stepped off the stage, walking down the steps. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He walked straight toward us. Rok-jin straightened his tie, looking nervous. "Father," he said, bowing deeply. "I apologize. This woman, my ex, she crashed the party. I was just throwing her out." Mu-jin didn't even look at his son. He walked right past Rok-jin, as if he was invisible. He stopped in front of me. He looked at the red and gold dress. He looked at the black diamond necklace resting on my collarbone. His eyes darkened with satisfaction. "Red suits you," he said softly. "Like fire." Rok-jin's head snapped up. "What?" I couldn't speak. I was trembling. "You." Mu-jin reached out and took my hand. His own hand, covered in the intricate symbols I had traced that night, felt hot against my skin. He brought my knuckles to his lips and kissed them, his eyes never leaving mine. "I told you I do not let people leave easily," he murmured. Then he turned to the room, still holding my hand. He looked at Rok-jin, who was staring with his mouth open. "Rok-jin," Mu-jin said, his voice cold and sharp. "You said she was trash. You said she was a placeholder." "Father." Rok-jin stammered. "How do you?" Mu-jin pulled me into his side, his arm wrapping around the waist of my red gown like he owned me. "I invited her," Mu-jin announced to the silent room. "And she is not leaving." He looked down at me. "Tamson, I have a question for you." "What?" I whispered, my heart hammering so hard I thought I might faint. "I need a wife," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I need someone who isn't afraid of the fire. I am tired of playing games." He reached into his pocket. No, he wouldn't. He pulled out a ring box. It was black velvet. He snapped it open. The diamond inside made Leora's ring look like a piece of glass from a gumball machine. It was a massive, flawless emerald-cut diamond. Mu-jin didn't kneel. He didn't need to. He just looked at me with that intense, burning gaze. "Marry me," he commanded. "Be mine." The room gasped. Rok-jin screamed. "Dad, are you crazy? That's my ex-girlfriend." Mu-jin looked at his son. "She was your ex. Now, she is my fiancé." He looked back at me, waiting. I looked at Rok-jin's horrified face. I looked at Leora's shock. And then I looked at the man who had made me feel like a queen for one night. "Yes," I said. Mu-jin slid the ring on my finger. He leaned in and kissed me a deep, searing kiss right in front of his son. When he pulled away, he whispered in my ear, "Let the games begin." The silence in the ballroom didn't last. It shattered like glass hitting concrete. As soon as Mu-jin's lips left mine, the room exploded. It wasn't just whispers anymore. It was a roar of confusion, shock, and the frantic clicking of camera shutters from the few press photographers allowed inside. I stood there, my hand still in his, the weight of the massive diamond on my finger feeling heavier than a shackle. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might bruise my ribs. I looked at Rok-jin. His face was a mask of pure horror, his skin pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Leora looked like she had swallowed a lemon whole. "This is a joke," Rok-jin finally choked out, his voice cracking. This is a sick joke. Dad, tell them. Tell them you're messing with me." Mu-jin didn't even blink. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the cameras. He only looked at me, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin of my wrist, grounding me, claiming me. "I do not joke about family," Rok-jin, Mu-jin said, his voice low but carrying across the room with terrifying clarity. "And I certainly do not joke about my wife. She's a gold digger." Leora shrieked, finally finding her voice. She pointed a manicured finger at me, her face twisting into something ugly. She's doing this to get back at us. She's poor. She's a nobody. She probably planned this. I flinched. The insult stung because part of it, the poverty part, was true. I felt the old shame rising up, the urge to shrink away and apologize for existing in their space. But then Mu-jin moved. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply turned his head and looked at Leora. The look was so cold, so devoid of humanity, that Leora actually took a step back, tripping over the hem of her pink dress. The tattoo on his neck seemed to pulse as a muscle in his jaw ticked. "Security," Mu-jin said softly. Two massive men materialized from the shadows instantly. "Miss Hayes is tired," Mu-jin said, his tone sounding like he was discussing the weather. "Escort her out. And make sure she is removed from the guest list of all future Han Corporation events." "What?" Leora gasped. "You can't. My father is a senator." "Your father," Mu-jin said, "will be receiving a call from my legal team in the morning regarding your public defamation of my fiancé. I suggest you leave before I decide to ruin his career along with your social standing." Leora turned pale. She looked at Rok-jin for help, but he was too busy staring at his father in terror to defend her. The security guards grabbed her arms, gently but firmly, and began to drag her away. "Rok-jin, do something," she screamed as she was hauled toward the exit. Rok-jin didn't move. He couldn't. Mu-jin turned back to me. The coldness vanished from his eyes, replaced by that dark, simmering heat that made my knees weak. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice intimate, excluding the rest of the world. I swallowed hard. "I think I'm going to be sick." "Not here," he murmured. He wrapped his arm around my waist, his hand splaying possessively over the red silk of my dress, and guided me away from the center of the room. The crowd parted for us instantly. No one dared to stop him. No one dared to ask questions. We walked past the stunned faces of Seoul's elite, past the chocolate fountain where Rok-jin was still standing like a statue, and toward a set of double mahogany doors at the back of the hall. As we passed Rok-jin, Mu-jin didn't stop, but he dropped one final sentence. "Enjoy the party, son. It is the last one you will attend on my dime." We swept through the doors and into a long, quiet corridor. The noise of the party faded instantly, replaced by the soft hum of the air conditioning. Mu-jin didn't stop walking until we reached a private elevator. He pressed his palm against a biometric scanner, and the doors slid open. We stepped inside. The doors closed, sealing us in a small, mirrored box. The adrenaline crashed. My legs gave out. I stumbled, but Mu-jin caught me before I could fall. He pulled me into his chest, holding me up effortlessly. I could smell him, that intoxicating mix of expensive sandalwood, aged whiskey, and something purely masculine. "Breathe," he ordered, his hand rubbing soothing circles on my back. "Deep breaths, Tamson." "You're his dad," I whispered into his tuxedo jacket. "You're his actual dad." "Biologically, yes," Mu-jin replied dryly. "Emotionally? That is debatable." "I slept with his dad," I mumbled, hysteria bubbling up in my throat. "I just got engaged to my ex-boyfriend's father in front of 500 people. This is insane." "I'm insane." "You are not insane," he said, pulling back slightly so he could look at my face. His hands came up to cup my cheeks, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. "You are simply reactive. I like that about you." "Why?" I demanded, pushing against his chest slightly. "Why did you do that? Why me? You could have any woman in that room. You could have a supermodel. You could have a CEO. Why pick the broke English teacher who got dumped on a rooftop?" The elevator dinged, opening into a private study that looked like it belonged in a museum. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with ancient books and modern art. He led me to a leather sofa and sat me down, then walked over to a crystal decanter. "Do you want the truth?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking. He walked back and handed me a glass. "Drink. It is a 30-year-old hibiki. It will help." I took a sip. It was smooth, warming my freezing blood. He sat on the coffee table in front of me, his knees brushing against mine. He leaned forward, his elbows on his thighs, forcing me to look at him. "I did not plan to marry anyone," he said, his voice low. "My life is complicated, dangerous. A wife is a weakness, a liability." "Then why?" "Because you were the first thing in 20 years that made me feel something other than boredom," he said, his eyes searching mine. "That night at the club, you were raw. You were honest. You looked at me and saw a man, not a bank account. And when I woke up and you were gone, I was angry. I am never angry." He reached out and touched the black diamond necklace resting on my skin. His fingers were hot. "I had my security team run a background check on you the moment you left the hotel," he confessed. "I used a private intelligence AI, something far more advanced than what the police have. I knew everything about you in 10 minutes. Where you lived, where you worked, your debts, and who your ex-boyfriend was." I gasped. "You knew?" "You knew before tonight." "I knew," he nodded. "And it made me want you more." "That's sick," I whispered, though I didn't pull away. "Perhaps," he agreed, a small, dangerous smile playing on his lips. "But when I saw how he treated you, how he discarded you like trash, I decided I would take what he was too stupid to keep. I wanted to see his face when he realized what he lost. And I wanted to give you the power to crush him." "So this is revenge?" I asked, feeling a pang of hurt. "I'm just a tool for you to teach your son a lesson?" "No," he said sharply. He grabbed my hand, squeezing it tight. "The revenge is a bonus. The prize is you." He leaned closer, the scent of him overwhelming my senses. "I watched you tonight, Tamson. When you walked in wearing that red dress, looking like a goddess of war, I knew I couldn't let you walk out of here as a single woman. You need protection. You need resources. And I need you." "You don't even know me," I argued weakly. "I know enough," he said. "I know you are strong. I know you are proud. And I know that right now, your body is reacting to me just as much as mine is reacting to you." He was right. My skin was burning when he touched me. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating, and electric. I looked at the tattoo on his neck, the serpent winding its way up toward his jaw. "What is that?" I asked, reaching out to trace the ink with a trembling finger. He froze for a second, then leaned into my touch. "A reminder. In my world, you must be a snake to survive the rats." "Are you a snake?" I asked. "I am the king cobra," he whispered. He leaned in, his lips brushing against the shell of my ear. "And you, Tamson, you are the only one who has ever dared to pet the snake." I shivered. The way he spoke, the way he looked at me, it was intoxicating. For years, I had been with Rok-jin, a boy who played games. Now, I was sitting in front of a man who played for keeps. A man who had just claimed me in front of the world. "What happens now?" I asked. "The press, my job, everything is going to be a mess." "I have handled it," he assured me, pulling back. "My PR team is already scrubbing the internet of any unflattering photos. We have a reputation management firm, the best in Asia, spinning the story as a whirlwind romance. By tomorrow morning, you will be the Cinderella of Seoul. As for your job, you can quit. Or you can buy the school. It is your choice." "Buy the school." I laughed, a short, hysterical sound. "You're joking." "I never joke," he reminded me. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the study burst open. We both turned. Rok-jin stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. He had gotten past the guards, or maybe Mu-jin had let him through. "You can't do this," Rok-jin shouted, stumbling into the room. "Dad, this is insane. She's used goods. She's my leftovers." The air in the room dropped 20 degrees. Mu-jin didn't stand up. He didn't even raise his voice. He just looked at his son with an expression of utter disgust. "Leftovers," Mu-jin repeated, the word dripping with ice. "Yes," Rok-jin ranted, pacing the floor. "I slept with her for 2 years. She's boring. She's poor. She's nothing. Everyone is going to laugh at us. The stock price will tank. You're marrying the girl I dumped. Mu-jin stood up then, slowly, unfolding his tall frame like a predator rising from the grass. He walked over to Rok-jin. He towered over his son. You think the stock price will tank because I found a beautiful wife? Mu-jin asked quietly. No, Rok-jin. The stock price would tank if they knew my heir was an incompetent, insecure child who needs to humiliate women to feel like a man. I'm not. Silence, Mu-jin commanded. The word cracked like a whip. Rok-jin's mouth snapped shut. You say she is leftovers, Mu-jin said, stepping closer, forcing Rok-jin to back up. But looking at her, sitting there in my study, drinking my whiskey, wearing my ring, she does not look like leftovers to me. She looks like a woman who was starved of affection by a boy who didn't know what to do with a woman. Mu-jin reached out and straightened Rok-jin's crooked tie, a gesture that looked paternal but felt threatening. You had a diamond, and you treated it like glass, Mu-jin said softly. Now, she belongs to me. And let me be clear, son. If you ever speak to her with disrespect again, if you ever call her leftovers or trash, I will strip you of your inheritance so fast your head will spin. You will be working at a convenience store in Busan before you can blink. Do you understand? Rok-jin paled. He looked at me, sitting on the couch, watching the scene unfold. I saw the fear in his eyes. For the first time in our relationship, I was the one with the power. Do you understand? Mu-jin repeated, his voice dropping to a growl. Yes, sir, Rok-jin whispered. Good, Mu-jin patted his cheek. Now, get out. My fiancé and I have things to discuss. Rok-jin looked at me one last time, a mix of hatred and confusion, before turning and fleeing the room. The door clicked shut. Mu-jin let out a long breath and ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style. He turned back to me, his expression softening. I apologize for the interruption, he said. You terrified him, I said, awe in my voice. He needs to be terrified, Mu-jin shrugged. He has been soft for too long. He walked back to me and extended his hand. Come. The party is over for us. I am taking you home. Home? I asked, taking his hand. My apartment? He pulled me up, his body heat enveloping me again. No, he said, bringing my face close to his eyes dropping to my lips. To our home. You don't live in that apartment anymore, Tamson. You are the future matriarch of the Han clan. You live in the fortress now. I don't have my things, I protested weakly, though my body was melting against his. We will buy new things, he dismissed. Better things. Tonight, all you need is that dress and me. My breath hitched. The implication was clear. The sensual tension that had been simmering between us all night flared up into a blazing fire. Is this part of the deal? I asked breathlessly. There is no deal, he whispered, brushing his lips against mine, teasing me. There is only desire. And I know you feel it too. He was right. I did. God help me, I did. Take me home, I whispered. He scooped me up into his arms, bridal style, as if I weighed nothing. Hold on tight, my queen, he murmured against my neck, his tattoo rough against my skin. It's going to be a long night. We exited the study, leaving the chaos of my old life behind, and stepped into the elevator that would take me to a world of danger, luxury, and a man who looked at me like I was the only water in a desert. I was Tamsin Cole, the broken teacher, the dumped girlfriend, and now, the Mafia Don's wife. Little did I know, the real danger wasn't Rok-jin. It wasn't the press. The real danger was falling in love with a monster who made me feel like an angel. And the monster was just getting started. The ride to the estate was a blur of city lights and heavy silence. I sat in the back of the Maybach, the red silk of my dress pooling around me like a puddle of blood. The car was a sanctuary, insulated from the chaos we had just left behind. The seats were heated, massaging the tension out of my stiff back, and the ambient lighting was a soft, calming violet. Mu-jin sat next to me. He wasn't touching me now, but his presence filled the entire vehicle. He had loosened his tie, and the top two buttons of his shirt were undone, giving me a clear view of the ink that stained his skin. The tattoo on his neck, a complex design of scales and shadows, seemed to breathe as he turned his head to look out the window. "You are quiet," he said, not looking at me. "I'm processing," I replied, my voice sounding small in the luxurious space. "I just agreed to marry a man I've met twice. I just humiliated my ex-boyfriend in front of half of Seoul. And I'm currently being driven to a fortress by a man who probably has a sniper rifle in the trunk." Mu-jin chuckled. It was a dark, rich sound. He turned to face me, the streetlights casting shadows across his sharp cheekbones. "There is no sniper rifle in the trunk," he said, a playful glint in his eyes. "That is in the escort vehicle behind us." I stared at him. "You're joking." "I told you, Tamson. I never joke about security." He reached into the center console and pulled out a bottle of Evian water and a small packet of something. "Here," he said, handing them to me. "Hydrate. And take this. It is a vitamin supplement for stress. My doctors insist on it. When you live a life like mine, cortisol management is not a luxury. It is a survival tactic." I took the water and the packet, feeling a bit hysterical. "Vitamins? You're a mafia boss who worries about his cortisol levels." "I am a businessman," he corrected smoothly. "And a businessman protects his assets. You are now my most valuable asset." I opened the water and drank, the cool liquid soothing my parched throat. "Is that what I am? An asset?" Mu-jin's expression shifted. The playfulness vanished, replaced by that intense, burning hunger that made my stomach flip. He reached out and ran his knuckles down my cheek. "No," he whispered. "Assets are replaceable. You're becoming a necessity." The car slowed down, turning off the main highway and onto a private road winding up the mountain. We approached a massive iron gate. Cameras flashed, not paparazzi, but security scanners. The gate groaned open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient pine trees. At the top of the hill stood the house. It wasn't a house, it was a modern palace of glass, concrete, and steel, cantilevered over the edge of the cliff. It looked cold, impenetrable, and breathtakingly expensive. "Welcome home," Mu-jin said as the car came to a smooth halt. The driver opened the door. Mu-jin got out first, offering his hand. I took it, stepping out into the cool mountain air. The wind whipped the hem of my red dress around my legs. A line of staff was waiting at the entrance. Maids, butlers, security guards. As we approached, they all bowed in perfect unison, bending at 90 degrees. "Welcome back, Chairman," they chorused. "Welcome, Madam." Madam. The word hit me like a physical blow. Yesterday, I was Miss Cole, the teacher who got yelled at for using too much printer paper. Today, I was Madam, the mistress of a mountain fortress. Mu-jin didn't stop to introduce me. He walked straight past them, pulling me with him. We entered the foyer, which had ceilings 3 stories high and a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystals. "Are you hungry?" he asked, unbuttoning his suit jacket. "No," I said. I'm tired. And overwhelmed." "Then we sleep," he said. He led me to the elevator, not the one we used at the hotel, but a glass cylinder in the center of the house. We rose up, the ground floor shrinking beneath us. "This floor is ours," he explained as the doors opened. "No staff is allowed here unless summoned. This is the only place where I can truly close my eyes." We walked down a hallway lined with art that probably cost more than the GDP of a small country. He opened double doors at the end of the hall, revealing a master suite that spanned the entire width of the house. The view was insane. The entire wall was glass, overlooking the glittering lights of Seoul far below. It felt like we were floating in the sky. Mu-jin walked over to a control panel on the wall. "Smart glass," he muttered, tapping a button. The glass instantly turned opaque, blocking out the world. "Privacy mode activated." He turned to me. We were alone. Truly alone. The silence stretched, heavy and thick with tension. I stood in the middle of the room, clutching my clutch bag like a shield. "Come here," he said softly. I walked toward him. My legs felt like jelly. I stopped a foot away. He looked down at me, his dark eyes scanning my face, my neck, the swell of my breasts in the low-cut dress. He reached out and touched the black diamond necklace. "You wore my gift," he said. "I knew it would look perfect on you." "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Not as beautiful as the woman wearing it." He stepped closer, closing the gap. His body heat radiated toward me. He reached behind me, his fingers finding the zipper of my dress. "May I?" he asked, his voice rough. I nodded, unable to speak. He slowly, agonizingly slowly, pulled the zipper down. The cool air hit my skin as the red silk loosened. He peeled the fabric away from my shoulders, letting it slide down my arms, over my hips, until it pooled on the floor in a shimmering heap of red and gold. I stood before him in my lace lingerie, feeling exposed and vulnerable. But Mu-jin didn't look at me with lust, or not just lust. He looked at me with reverence. Like I was a piece of art he had been waiting his whole life to collect. He traced the line of my collarbone with his tattooed hand. The contrast of his ink against my dark skin was striking. "You are perfect," he murmured. "I have scars," I whispered, feeling self-conscious. "I have stretch marks. I'm not perfect." "I have tattoos to cover my sins," he said, bringing my hand up to his lips to kiss my palm. "Your marks show you have lived." "I prefer a woman who has lived." He picked me up then, carrying me to the massive bed that looked like a cloud. He laid me down gently, hovering over me. He shed his shirt, tossing it aside. I stared at him. The tattoos on his chest were even more intricate than the ones on his neck. A tiger roared across his pectorals, battling a dragon that wound around his ribs. He was a canvas of violence and beauty. "Are you afraid?" he asked, bracing his weight on his elbows so he wouldn't crush me. "No," I said honestly. "I feel safe." "Good," he growled. "Because I will kill anyone who tries to make you feel otherwise." He kissed me. It wasn't the searing, public kiss from the party. This was slow, deep, exploring. He kissed me like he had all the time in the world, like he wanted to memorize the taste of my mouth. His hands roamed over my body, rough but gentle, igniting fires everywhere he touched. I arched into him, wrapping my legs around his waist, pulling him closer. I needed him. I needed to forget Rok-jin, forget the betrayal, forget the fear. I needed to drown in this man. "Mu-jin," I gasped against his lips. "Say it again," he commanded, biting my lower lip. "Mu-jin." "My name sounds like a prayer on your lips," he groaned. We moved together in the darkness of the room, two broken people finding a strange, jagged kind of fit. It was intense, passionate, and overwhelmingly emotional. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a placeholder. I felt like the main event. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of a low voice speaking Korean. I stretched, my body aching in a good way. The bed was massive, but I was alone on my side. I sat up, pulling the high thread count sheet around me. Mu-jin was standing by the window. The smart glass was translucent now, letting in the soft morning light. He was wearing a silk robe that hung loosely on his frame, revealing the tattoo on his chest. He was on the phone, his back to me. "No," he was saying, his voice cold and professional. "Kill the story. I don't care how much they offer. Buy the magazine if you have to." "Yes." "And tell the legal team to draft the NDA for the guests. If anyone leaks a video of my wife, I want their digital footprint erased." "Understood." He hung up and turned around. Seeing me awake, his cold expression melted instantly. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," he said, walking over to the bed. He sat on the edge, placing a tray he had been holding onto the nightstand. It had coffee, fresh fruit, and a sleek, brand-new smartphone. "Good morning," I rasped, pushing my hair out of my face. Were you buying a magazine?" "Just handling the fallout," he said casually, handing me the coffee. "Rok-jin gave an interview to a gossip rag last night while drunk. I made sure it will never see the light of day." "He gave an interview?" I felt a spike of anxiety. "What did he say? Does it matter?" Mu-jin asked, his eyes darkening. It has been deleted. The journalist has been persuaded to pursue a different career. And the publication has a new majority shareholder as of 5 minutes ago. Me. I stared at him. You bought the magazine to stop an article? I protect what is mine, he said simply. He pointed to the new phone. Your old phone is compromised. Too many people have your number. Rok-jin, that friend of yours, they will try to contact you. This is a secure device. It has military-grade encryption. No one calls you unless I whitelist them. I picked up the phone. It was heavy, sleek, and expensive. This feels a little controlling, Mu-jin. It is protective, he corrected. But if you want to keep your old phone and listen to Leora leave you 50 voicemails calling you a whore, be my guest. I winced. Okay, point taken. Also, he added, buttering a piece of toast for me. I have arranged for a team to come today. Stylists, a personal shopper, and a brand consultant. A brand consultant? I choked on my coffee. I'm a teacher, not a K-pop idol. You're the wife of the chairman, he said. Your image is power. We need to control the narrative. The press is already calling you the Cinderella of Gangnam. We need to lean into that. We need to make you untouchable. He paused, looking at me seriously. And I have booked a consultation with the foundation. The foundation? It is a private medical and wellness group, he explained. They use advanced AI diagnostics to create health plans. Therapy, nutrition, stress management. You have been through a trauma, Tamson. Betrayal is a trauma. I want you to talk to someone. Someone who isn't me. My chest tightened. It was incredibly thoughtful. Rok-jin used to tell me I was too sensitive when I cried. Mu-jin was hiring a team of doctors to make sure I was okay. Thank you, I whispered. That's really kind. I am not kind, he reminded me, leaning in to kiss my forehead. I am efficient. A healthy wife is a happy wife. Suddenly, a loud chime echoed through the room. It wasn't my new phone. It was a wall panel near the door. Mu-jin frowned. He walked over to the panel and pressed a button. A video feed appeared on the screen. It was the front gate. Standing there, looking disheveled and angry, was Rok-jin. And next to him was an older woman, a woman I recognized from the society pages. Mu-jin's mother. The matriarch. Open the gate, Mu-jin, the woman screamed at the camera. I know you're in there with that foreign girl. Have you lost your mind? You're shaming this family. Mu-jin sighed, rubbing his temples. The tattoo on his neck flexed as he clenched his jaw. He muttered. The final boss has arrived. He turned to me. Stay here. Do not come down. Do not open the door. That's your mother, I said, feeling a wave of panic. She hates me. She hates everyone, Mu-jin said grimly. She hates me too. But she is about to learn that I am not the boy she used to bully. He tightened the sash of his robe and walked toward the door. Before he left, he looked back at me. Trust me, Tamson. No one gets to you. Not even her. He left the room. I sat there in the massive bed, surrounded by luxury, holding a secure phone, and watched the screen as the man I had agreed to marry walked out to face the dragon that birthed him. I looked down at the engagement ring on my finger. It sparkled innocently. Let the games begin, he had said. I had a feeling the game was about to get violent. I unlocked the new phone. I expected it to be empty. But there was already one app installed. A security app connected to the house cameras. I tapped it. I saw the front driveway. Mu-jin was walking out to meet his mother and Rok-jin. I watched as his mother raised her hand to slap him. And I watched as Mu-jin caught her wrist in midair, his face like stone. My heart stopped. I wasn't just watching a family drama. I was watching a war. And I was the prize. My breath hitched in my throat as I watched the screen. On the high-definition display of the secure phone, Mu-jin looked like a statue carved from granite. His mother, a woman who looked small but radiated pure venom, was struggling to pull her wrist free from his grip. Rok-jin stood behind her, looking like a terrified child hiding behind his mommy's skirt. You dare? The woman screeched, her voice tinny through the phone's speakers. I gave you life. I made you the chairman. And you treat me like a common thug. I treat you like a threat, Mu-jin replied, his voice calm, low, and terrifying. And right now, you are threatening the peace of my home. Home. She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. This is not a home. It is a fortress for your sins. And now you bring a whore into it? A foreigner? Do you know what the board members are saying? Do you know what the stock market will do when they find out you married your son's garbage? I flinched. Garbage. The word echoed in the silent bedroom. I looked at the door. Mu-jin had told me to stay put. He told me to trust him. And I did. I trusted that he could handle his mother. But sitting here, hiding in a tower like a damsel in distress while he fought my battles? That wasn't who I was. That wasn't the queen he claimed to see in me. I wasn't Tamson the placeholder anymore. I tossed the phone onto the duvet and slid off the massive bed. I walked over to the closet Mu-jin had opened earlier. Inside, rows of clothes were waiting clearly. His team had been busy before we even arrived. I bypassed the dresses and grabbed a floor-length silk robe in a deep, midnight blue. It was heavy, expensive, and looked like armor. I tied the sash tight around my waist, checked my reflection in the mirror, messy hair, swollen lips, eyes blazing with adrenaline, and opened the bedroom door. I walked to the elevator and slammed the button for the ground floor. The descent felt like it took hours. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm of fear and fury. I wasn't going down there to fight. I was going down there to stand. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The foyer was tense. The staff had vanished, wisely making themselves scarce. Through the open front doors, the morning wind blew in, carrying the scent of pine and impending violence. I walked out onto the driveway. The gravel crunched under my bare feet. The sound was sharp enough to cut through the shouting. You will annul this marriage immediately, the older woman was yelling, her finger pointing in Mu-jin's face. Or I will release the files, Mu-jin. I will tell the shareholders about the incident in Busan. I will bury you. Release them, Mu-jin said, sounding bored. I buried those bodies years ago, mother. Literally and metaphorically. Ahem. I didn't shout. I just cleared my throat. 3 heads snapped toward me. Mu-jin turned first. His eyes widened slightly, a flash of surprise that was quickly replaced by something hotter. Pride. He didn't look angry that I had disobeyed him. He looked energized. Rok-jin looked like he had seen a ghost. His jaw dropped. The older woman, Madame Baek, turned slowly. She was elegant, I'll give her that. Dressed in a Chanel suit that cost more than my college tuition, with hair coiffed into a helmet of perfection. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, and full of hate. So she sneered, looking me up and down. This is the creature. I walked down the steps, ignoring the cold stones biting into my soles. I stopped right next to Mu-jin. I didn't touch him, but I stood close enough to feel the heat radiating off his body. I aligned myself with him. A united front. My name is Tamson, I said, keeping my voice steady. And I would appreciate it if you lowered your voice. You are disturbing the peace. Madame Baek looked like I had just slapped her. Does it speak? She turned to Mu-jin. You let the help speak to me like that? She is not the help, Mu-jin said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a growl. She is the lady of the house. And she has more dignity in her bare feet than you have in your entire wardrobe. Dignity. Madame Baek laughed, a cruel, hacking sound. She took a step toward me. Listen to me, girl. I don't know what game you are playing. I don't know what voodoo you used to trap my idiot son and now my idiot son's father. But this is not your world. You are a tourist here. And tourists always go home. I'm not a tourist, I said, meeting her gaze head-on. I'm a resident. And unlike you, I didn't need to threaten anyone to get here. I was invited. I looked at Rok-jin. He was staring at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. And as for your son, I continued, my voice hardening. You can have him back. I returned to him weeks ago. He was defective. Mu-jin let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a dark sound of pure amusement. Madame Baek's face turned purple. She raised her hand again, instinct taking over, aiming for my face this time. But she never got close. Mu-jin moved faster than a human should be able to move. He caught her wrist again, but this time, he didn't just hold it. He twisted it slightly, not enough to break it, but enough to hurt. "Don't," he whispered. The single word carried the weight of a death sentence. The tattoo on his neck flexed as the muscles in his throat tightened. He leaned down, his face inches from his mother's. "You laid a hand on me, and I forgave it because you gave birth to me," Mu-jin said softly. "But if you ever raise a hand against my wife, I will forget that we share blood. Do you understand?" Madame Baek gasped, pain and fear flickering in her eyes. She pulled her arm back as Mu-jin released her. She stumbled into Rok-jin, who caught her awkwardly. "You are making a mistake," she hissed, rubbing her wrist. "She will destroy you." "Then I will enjoy the destruction," Mu-jin replied. "Let's go, mother," Rok-jin mumbled, finally speaking. He looked at me one last time, a look of regret mixed with fear, before guiding his mother toward the waiting limousine. "This isn't over." Madame Baek screamed as she got into the car. "I will call the board. I will call the press. Call them." Mu-jin shouted back, his voice booming across the valley. "Tell them the king has found his queen. Tell them all." The car doors slammed shut. The engine roared, and the vehicle sped away, gravel spraying behind it. Silence returned to the mountain. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My legs started to shake. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me lightheaded. Mu-jin turned to me. The violence in his eyes vanished, replaced by a concern so intense it almost knocked me over. "You disobeyed me," he said softly. "I don't like hiding," I replied, wrapping the robe tighter around myself. "And I don't like people fighting my battles." He stepped closer. He reached out and tucked a strand of windblown hair behind my ear. His hand lingered on my cheek, his thumb tracing my lower lip. "You were magnificent," he whispered. I was terrified, I admitted. "You didn't look terrified," he said. "You looked royal." He looked down at my feet. "You are barefoot. The stones are cold." Before I could protest, he swept me up into his arms again. I gasped, wrapping my arms around his neck. "I can walk," I said. "I know," he said, carrying me back up the stairs. "But I prefer to carry you. It is selfish of me. I like the weight of you in my arms. It proves you are real." We walked back into the foyer. The house was quiet, but it felt different now. Less like a cold museum and more like ours. "We have an hour before the team arrives," Mu-jin said as the elevator took us back up to our sanctuary. "An hour of peace. What do we do with an hour?" I asked, my voice breathless. The elevator doors opened. He carried me straight to the bedroom, but he didn't put me on the bed. He walked to the bathroom, a space the size of my old apartment, covered in white marble and gold fixtures. In the center was a massive soaking tub. "We wash off the toxicity," he said. He set me down on the vanity counter. He turned on the tap, and steam began to rise immediately. He poured something into the water, bath salts from a jar labeled aromatherapy distress. "Get in," he said, turning to me. He didn't undress me this time. He waited. It was an invitation, not a command. I dropped the robe. We bathed together in silence. The water was hot, smelling of eucalyptus and mint. Mu-jin sat behind me, his chest against my back, his arms wrapped around me. I leaned my head back against his shoulder, closing my eyes. I could feel the tattoo on his chest pressing against my skin. "She won't stop, will she?" I asked quietly, playing with the bubbles. "No," Mu-jin murmured, his lips brushing my wet shoulder. "She is a creature of habit. She craves power. Losing control over me drives her mad." "What did she mean about Busan?" I asked. "The incident?" I felt Mu-jin tense up behind me. For a second, I thought he wouldn't answer. "I was young," he said, his voice vibrating through the water. "And I was efficient. There was a rival gang. They threatened the family. I handled it. It was messy, but it secured our position. Did you? I couldn't finish the sentence. I did what was necessary, he said. I am not a good man, Tamson. I told you this. I have blood on my hands, but I wash them every day so I can hold you without staining your skin. I turned in the water to face him. His dark hair was wet, plastered to his forehead. Water droplets clung to his eyelashes. He looked vulnerable, despite the tattoos and the violence. I don't need a good man, I whispered, reaching out to touch the dragon on his chest. I need a man who stays. I am not going anywhere, he swore. He leaned in and kissed me. The water sloshed over the sides of the tub as he pulled me onto his lap. The steam, the heat, the danger. It was a heady mix. Mu-jin, I gasped as his hands moved underwater, finding the curves of my hips. Yes, he groaned. We have. The team is coming, I reminded him, though I didn't want him to stop. Let them wait, he growled. Let the whole world wait. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. The team Mu-jin hired was like a military operation of beauty and wellness. A stylist named Chloe, who looked like she stepped out of Vogue, reorganized my entire existence in 2 hours. Red is your color, Chloe declared, holding up a garnet silk blouse. But we need to soften the daytime look. Cashmere. Silk. Structure. They measured me for everything. Suits, gowns, even lingerie. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Then came the doctor from the foundation. Dr. Lee. She was kind, professional, and carried a tablet that seemed to know more about my body than I did. Your cortisol is spiked, she said, showing me a graph. We need to integrate a wellness routine immediately. The chairman has authorized a full spa wing renovation for you, but for now, we will start with daily cryotherapy and 4 vitamin drips. Cryotherapy? I asked. Freezing myself? It boosts resilience, Dr. Lee smiled. And it is excellent for the skin. Also, I have prescribed a subscription to Mindcom AI. It's a therapy bot that is available 24/7. Given the high-stress environment of your new life, having an outlet at 3 a.m. is crucial. I nodded, taking it all in. This world was insane. They threw money at problems I didn't even know I had. By evening, I was exhausted. I was wearing a new cream-colored cashmere lounge set that cost more than my car. I sat on the balcony of the bedroom, watching the sunset over Seoul. Mu-jin came out, holding 2 glasses of wine. He had changed into fresh clothes, black slacks, and a black turtleneck that emphasized his broad shoulders. He looked like the villain in a spy movie, but he was my villain. You survived, he said, handing me a glass. Barely, I laughed. Your team is intense. They are the best, he said. And you deserve the best. He sat next to me. I have news. Good news or bad news? Interesting news, he said. My mother has called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. She is going to try to vote me out as chairman. My stomach dropped. Because of me? Because she thinks I am distracted, he corrected. She thinks that because I am in love, I am weak. In love. He said it so casually. My heart skipped a beat. Are you? I asked softly. Distracted. He looked at me, his eyes burning with that familiar intensity. Completely. But that does not make me weak, Tamson. It makes me dangerous. Because now I have something to fight for. He took a sip of wine. I am going to that meeting tomorrow. And I am going to crush her rebellion. But... He paused. But what? I want you to come with me, he said. I choked on my wine. Me? To a board meeting? Mu-jin, I'm an English teacher. I don't know anything about corporate takeovers. You don't need to know business, he said. You need to know power. I want you to walk in there on my arm. I want you to sit at the head of the table next to me. I want them to see that I am not hiding you. I want them to see that the woman I chose is strong enough to stare down a room full of sharks. He reached out and took my hand. Will you do this for me? He asked. Will you be my queen in the snake pit? I looked at the city lights below. I thought about Leora and Rok-jin laughing at me on the rooftop. I thought about Madame Baek calling me garbage. I looked at Mu-jin. the man who had given me dignity when everyone else tried to take it away. I squeezed his hand. "What do I wear?" I asked. Mu-jin smiled. A wicked, sharp smile. "Wear the black suit," he said. "The one with the gold buttons. We are going to a funeral, after all." "Whose funeral?" I asked. "My mother's career," he replied. The elevator doors to the executive floor of the Han Corporation didn't ding. They slid open with a heavy, expensive hush. I stepped out, my heels clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. I was wearing the black suit Mu-jin had chosen. It was severe, sharp, with gold buttons that gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. My hair was pulled back into a sleek, tight bun, and my lips were painted a dark blood red. I didn't look like a teacher. I looked like an assassin. Mu-jin was beside me, his hand resting on the small of my back, a warm, heavy weight that grounded me. He wore a matching black suit, his tie pitch black, the tattoo on his neck just barely visible above his collar, pulsing like a warning sign. "Ready?" he murmured, his voice low and rough near my ear. "No," I admitted, my heart hammering against my ribs. "But let's do it anyway." "That is the spirit," he smirked. "Remember, do not look down. You are above them. Always above them." We walked toward the double glass doors of the boardroom. Through the glass, I could see them, 12 old men in gray suits, and at the head of the table, sitting in Mu-jin's chair, was his mother, Madame Baek. She looked like a vulture waiting to pick a carcass clean. Rok-jin was sitting next to her, looking pale and sweaty. Before we walk into this war zone, if you are loving this story and want to see how the queen takes her throne, make sure you subscribe to Stories Pulse, like this video, and comment Queen Energy down below. I want to know who is riding with me until the end. Now let's go bury a legacy. Mu-jin didn't knock. He pushed the doors open with one hand, the heavy glass swinging wide. The conversation inside stopped instantly. Every head turned. "You're late," Madame Baek snapped, her eyes narrowing as they landed on me. "And you brought the pet." "I told you this was a closed session, Mu-jin." "And I told you that I am the chairman," Mu-jin said, his voice calm, echoing off the walls. "Which means I decide who sits at my table. And you're sitting in my chair." He walked over to her. He didn't rush. He moved with the lazy, terrifying confidence of a predator who knows he has already won. He stood next to the chair, looming over his mother. "Move," he said softly. The room went deadly silent. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, looking at their papers. "We are voting today, Mu-jin," Madame Baek hissed, standing up but refusing to move away. "A vote of no confidence. Your reckless behavior. This marriage to a nobody. It is jeopardizing the company's future. The stock dropped 2 points this morning." "It dropped because you leaked a rumor about my mental health," Mu-jin corrected, finally taking his seat as she stepped aside. He pointed to the empty chair next to him, the one usually reserved for the vice chairman. "Sit, Tamson." I sat. I felt 12 pairs of eyes boring me, judging me, hating me. "This is ridiculous," an older man with thick glasses grumbled. "Director Choi. She is a foreigner. A school teacher. What does she know about our business? She is a liability, Chairman. A pretty distraction." My hands clenched into fists under the table. Liability. That word again. Mu-jin turned his head slowly to look at Director Choi. "Careful, Director. You are speaking about the largest shareholder of the Han Corporation." Director Choi blinked. "What?" "I transferred 10% of my personal shares to my wife this morning," Mu-jin said, casually adjusting his cuffs. "Which means she owns more of this company than you do. So if she is a liability, then you are, what? An irrelevance." The room gasped. I stared at Mu-jin. He hadn't told me that. He had given me billions? "You gave her shares?" Madame Baek shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. "You gave family stock to an outsider? You are insane. You are unfit to lead." "I am the only one fit to lead," Mu-jin roared, his voice finally breaking its calm facade. The sudden volume made everyone jump. Because I am the only one who looks forward to it. You look at lineage. You look at bloodlines. I look at strength. He stood up, pacing behind my chair, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. You say she is a distraction? Mu-jin asked the room. Look at her. She was humiliated by my son. Betrayed by her friend. Attacked by my mother. And yet, here she sits. Head high. Eyes dry. Wearing the color of mourning because she knows she is about to watch you all die professionally. He leaned down, his face next to mine. Tell them, Tamson. Tell them why you are here. I took a deep breath. I remembered the foundation therapy session. I remembered the cryotherapy. I remembered the feeling of Mu-jin's skin against mine in the bath. I wasn't Tamson the victim. I looked straight at Director Choi. I am here, I said, my voice steady and clear, because this company needs a heart. You have been running it like a machine, grinding people down. Mu-jin, my husband, he wants to build an empire, not a graveyard. And I am here to make sure he doesn't lose his humanity while dealing with sharks like you. Silence. Then, Mu-jin smiled. It was a terrifyingly proud smile. We vote, Mu-jin commanded. All those in favor of removing me as chairman? Madame Baek raised her hand high. Me. Rok-jin hesitated, looked at his father, then at his mother. His hand twitched. Raise it, coward, Mu-jin taunted softly. Rok-jin raised his hand. 2, Mu-jin counted. He looked around the table. Anyone else? Director Choi looked at Madame Baek. Then he looked at Mu-jin. He looked at the tattoo peeking out of Mu-jin's collar, the symbol of the brutal power Mu-jin held in the underworld, not just the boardroom. Director Choi kept his hands on the table. One by one, the other directors looked down. No one else raised a hand. The motion fails, Mu-jin declared. He turned to his mother. Now, my turn. He pulled a file from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. This, Mu-jin said, is a record of the funds you have been siphoning from the charity foundation to pay for your gambling debts in Macau. And the bribes you paid to the senator, Miss Hay's father, to cover it up. Madame Baek went pale. That is a lie. It is a 4K video recording, Mu-jin said coldly. I have sent a copy to the prosecutor's office. They are waiting downstairs. You wouldn't, she whispered, clutching her pearls. I am your mother. And I am the chairman, Mu-jin said. Security. The doors opened. The same guards who had thrown Leora out of the party marched in. Escort Madame Baek to the lobby, Mu-jin ordered. The police are waiting. Mu-jin, she screamed as they grabbed her arms. I curse you. I curse this marriage. You will destroy each other. Get her out, Mu-jin said, turning his back on her. Rok-jin stood up, trembling. Dad. I didn't know. Mu-jin looked at his son. You are not going to jail, Rok-jin. That would be too easy. You are going to the branch office in Jeju. To manage the warehouse. You leave tonight. Warehouse. Rok-jin stammered. But I'm an executive. Not anymore, Mu-jin said. Goodbye, son. Rok-jin slumped, defeated. He walked out of the room, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. The room was silent. The board members were terrified. Mu-jin looked at them. The meeting was adjourned. He grabbed my hand and pulled me up. Let's go. We walked out of the boardroom, leaving the stunned silence behind us. We walked to the elevator, the heavy doors closing on the life I used to be afraid of. As soon as we were alone in the elevator, Mu-jin collapsed against the wall, letting out a long, heavy exhale. The mask of the monster slipped, revealing the tired man underneath. Are you okay? I asked, stepping close to him. He pulled me into him, burying his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. I am now. It is done. She is gone. You sent your mother to prison, I whispered, stroking the hair at the nape of his neck. She chose her path, he mumbled against my skin. I chose mine. I chose you. He lifted his head, his eyes burning with that familiar, dark hunger. The adrenaline of the fight was turning into something else. Something primal. Let's go home, he growled. 6 months later. The flashing lights of the cameras were blinding as we stepped onto the red carpet. Over here, Madam Han. Chairman Han. Look here. I smiled, adjusting the strap of my custom Hermes gown, black, of course. It has become my signature color. Mu-jin was beside me, his hand firmly on my waist. He hated these events, the charity galas, the press nights, but he did them for me. Because I had taken over the foundation. I had turned it into a real force for good, funding mental health clinics and art programs for underprivileged kids. We stopped for a photo. I felt Mu-jin squeeze my waist. You look dangerous tonight, he whispered in my ear, ignoring the shouting photographers. I learned from the best, I whispered back. We walked inside the ballroom. It was the same venue where Rok-jin had humiliated me a year ago. But the vibe was different now. When we walked in, the room didn't just stop, it bowed. We were the power couple of Seoul. The Mafia King and his queen. I saw Leora across the room. She was serving drinks. Her father's scandal had ruined her family, and she was working for a high-end catering company now. Our eyes met. She looked away quickly, shame burning her face. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I just felt nothing. She was a ghost from a past life. Do you want to leave? Mu-jin asked, sensing my mood shift. Not yet, I said. I want to dance. He led me to the dance floor. He pulled me close, his body warm and solid against mine. We moved to the slow music, wrapped in our own little world. I have a surprise for you, he murmured, his lips brushing my forehead. Another necklace? I teased, touching the diamond at my throat. No, he said. I bought the building. I pulled back to look at him. Which building? The one where he proposed to the other girl, Mu-jin said, his eyes gleaming with dark amusement. The rooftop. I bought the hotel. I am going to tear it down and build an art center in your name. You're insane, I laughed, tears pricking my eyes. You are actually a monster. I told you, he said, tightening his grip on me. I am a monster. But I am your monster. And I love you, I whispered. He stopped moving. The crowd blurred around us. He looked at me with such raw, unfiltered emotion that it took my breath away. I love you, Tamson, he said, his voice cracking slightly. You saved me. We saved each other, I said. He kissed me then. It wasn't for the cameras. It wasn't for the crowd. It was for us. A promise sealed in blood and ink and diamonds. We had won the game. And as we walked out of the ballroom later that night, hand in hand, into the waiting night of Seoul, I knew one thing for sure. The placeholder was gone. The queen had risen. And long live the king. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of revenge, romance, and mafia justice, please smash that like button and subscribe to Stories Pulse for more. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Let me know in the comments, would you have forgiven the ex, or did he get what he deserved? See you in the next video.